Would you like to know the #1 secret about genetics that nobody ever tells you? I bet you would. This actually is really important information that more people should know. So stick around, watch the video to find out. Hi, my name is Jesse. Welcome to the channel, Open Source Owners, where we talk about what if humans had an owner's manual. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, this would certainly be in it, and I'm going to use depression as the example. Now, I studied depression and anxiety for my job, so I know this mental health world better than maybe other things, but this is going to count for all chronic disease. So you could put in diabetes type 2, heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke, cancer, many other chronic diseases, including almost all mental health diseases, would fall into this general category. And you'll see that what we're about to learn about depression will have important ramifications for all other chronic diseases. What we've been told about genetics is, generally speaking, by and large, misinterpreted by the public. And I want to straighten that out and do my little part to put a little more nuance and a little more reality behind what we know about genes. Many people feel that their genes are their destiny, and that is just not true anymore, especially if we're dealing with anything that responds to epigenetics, which we'll talk about in a second. So when we talk about depression, there is not a single gene associated with depression. Many people think that there is. And remember, this is true for cancer, this is true for heart disease, this is true for stroke. There is not a single gene. It's not the gene's problem. In fact, for depression, there are at least 44 genes linked to depression, and that probably number is growing all the time. Our expression of genes is what's called epigenetics. Epi comes from the word above or upon, so upon the genes or above the genes. Epigenetics turns on or off genes by silencing them or expressing them. The way to think about this is genes create proteins. So you have a gene and it creates multiple proteins, and that's something that was surprising. We thought it would be one gene, one protein. Turns out no. Genes create many, many different types of protein depending on the circumstances. Proteins then go on to do everything for us, including get turned into neurotransmitters and get turned into immune system function and all sorts of things that humans need. So these genetic risk factors are referred to as SNPs. And you may have heard of this. There's one SNP that most people have heard of, which we'll cover at the end. But SNP stands for single nucleotide polymorphism. SNPs occur due to the methylation cycles, oxidative stress, food intolerances, nutritional deficiencies, inflammation, amongst other things. So trauma, psychic trauma would involve many of these things. It would disrupt your methylation cycles. It would cause oxidative stress, and it would cause potential nutrient deficiencies due to the trauma that you're sort of metabolizing. And of course, it would cause inflammation. So SNPs you're sort of born with them. You inherit them through epigenetics. So we inherit a lot of our gene expression through epigenetics. We learn them in our environment. What our lifestyle is that's surrounding us allows those SNPs to express or not. They are not your destiny. You can change the SNPs. That's the key. You are born with a certain set of SNPs that is unique to you, just like I am, that is unique to me. And we'll see that that actually matters with all sorts of things. But don't feel like you're just, if you have that SNP, you're SOL, if you know what SOL stands for. If not, you can look it up. So these SNPs are risk factors or potential weaknesses in your genes and can be identified through genetic testing. So classic, 23andMe, stuff like that. And so here's just one quote from Dr. Thomas Insel. Despite huge expectations, neither genomics, so the study of genes, nor imaging has yet impacted the diagnosis or treatment of the 45 million Americans with serious or moderate mental illness each year. And that comes from this study here. So genetics work just in a very general way. In case you don't remember from high school biology, this is how you get your genes. You have homozygous or wild type, and you get 2 copies of that normal gene. Heterozygous, which is 1 copy of the normal gene and 1 copy of the weak gene. And then you have homozygous, which is 2 copies of the weak genes. Okay, so that's generally how it works. Now, I'm not a geneticist, so you might know watching this video way more than I do about that. That's okay. You don't have to really know this. The key is that these SNPs and these sort of epigenetic phenomena are alterable and changeable, okay? So this video is really just about how the genes are not the cause of things like depression or chronic disease. But in future videos and in other videos, we'll really discuss about well, what do we do about it? If we have certain SNPs, what do we do? So here are some of the main areas where we know that SNPs occur in humans and cause difficulty and disease in people. And remember, these are epigenetic. Now, you may have inherited it, but these are changeable. So real genes, like your deep genes, like your eyes are blue or you're 6 foot tall, those won't change, but over a really long expanse of time. But epigenetics change really quickly. Over years or decades or generations, they can change really quickly. That's why you can have epigenetic memory up to 14 generations. So if you had a family 5 generations ago that was involved in war, you will carry that epigenetic memory until it gets altered or changed or somehow addressed in some way, shape, or form. If we just become unconscious of those patterns within us, like you might wonder why everybody in your family is an alcoholic, or everybody in your family has physical or sexual abuse issues or emotional control issues. A lot of that is not just you as a faulty human. It's really an epigenetic echo or a memory that you're picking up from years and years and years and decades and generations of people in your lineage who probably did not know how to manage emotions except without drinking or except without physical violence. Now, it doesn't excuse anybody. It doesn't take anybody off the hook. What it does, though, it puts you in the seat of responsibility to change those dynamics for the better. Nutritional deficiencies. This is a big area. So if you take 23andMe and you get like a good integrative medicine doctor to understand the back end of that information, where they read about all your SNPs, they'll see things like this, VDR, RS 1544410, and they will kind of know what that means. You and I are going to be like in the dark. We're going to be like, I don't know what that means. It sounds very sciencey. But these are where you can actually begin to address and apply supplementation or nutrient therapy or certain exercises or certain lifestyle changes to address these sort of SNPs that you may have had. So if you've ever gotten 23andMe or something like that, or if you ever do in the future, you'll want to know these sort of big ones. And we're going to go through these quickly. You don't need to know them. I just want you to have access to this information. So vitamin D. If you have a SNP in vitamin D in one of those 5 areas, it's very likely that you will not be able to produce enough vitamin D to function healthily, and you might struggle then with chronic depression and go, I don't know why. Same thing is true of omega-3 and B12. Both of those, all 3 of those are related to depression and will make your likelihood of depression much higher. Often, if you just get your nutrients balanced, then your depression and your depressive symptoms begin to get better just through that aspect. And this is why psychiatry can't address these issues with talk therapy or with some type of coping skill or even with antidepressants, because they don't go deep enough. They don't go to the actual root. Now, depression is a very complex thing, so I'm not saying that everybody who's depressed has a vitamin D deficiency, but it's something that I would make sure to check if I was working with a client or if I personally was struggling with depression. I would get my levels tested, and you actually want to get your levels tested with a functional or integrative medicine doctor, because they'll be able to actually, they'll put it into the realm of functional levels of vitamin D or omega-3, not baseline level. A lot of primary care physicians will just do the baseline. Okay, you're not going to have scurvy or you're not going to have shingles or something like that. They'll keep you at a baseline like, okay, you're not going to die, you're not in danger, but what you want is optimum. You want to optimize those levels for you, and that's where integrative medicine doctors, naturopathic doctors, functional medicine doctors can, at least the good ones, can bring you into that realm and really help you understand like a functional level. An optimized level is different than just a survival level. Omega-3, that's really important if you're omega-3 deficient. You can also be omega-6 deficient. Vitamin B12 is deeply connected to depression, low energy, low mood, low libido, that type of thing. And there exactly is the SNP. So these are the genes that we are now able to identify. Food intolerances, this is a huge one. Many people have caffeine sensitivity, and that's actually related to a SNP. So you feel super jittery just with a sip of caffeine. Well, it might be that these SNPs are activated or silenced in your genetic expression. Lactose intolerance, obviously that's a huge one, and that comes from at least that SNP that we know about. There's probably others involved. Celiac disease, those SNPs there. Inflammation is a huge one. Now, inflammation sometimes gets a bad rap. Inflammation is good. It keeps you alive. It fights disease. It gets out of your body impurities and toxins and things like that. Chronic inflammation is bad. So if you're chronically inflamed all the time, that's going to feel like depression, anxiety, even suicidality. It's not going to feel good. You're not going to feel healthy. You're going to have messed up digestion. You're going to have messed up thinking patterns. You're going to have messed up sleep patterns. All sorts of things are going to go out of balance when you're in chronic inflammation. Now, this is a bunch of words here. IL, so IL-6 and IL-1, you see where all the ILs are? That stands for interleukin. That's an inflammation marker that the body produces to help you quell inflammation. TNF is tumor necrosis factor, and that's another one that you should just be aware of in the inflammation space. TNF, IL, and CRP is C-reactive protein. All of those are natural inflammation markers that the body sends out in order to sort of quell the inflammation. They are not the problem unto themselves. But you might, if you see high levels of those things all the time, that is a problem. And then a COX, I'm not sure what that is. COX, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe something with oxygen. Oxidation. So oxidation is the ability, oxidative stress is something that is very damaging to the cell body and including, and really importantly, to the mitochondria. So we don't want to live in high oxidation. You could live in high oxidation because you live under a radio or electric towers, or you could live with high oxidation because you're eating foods that you're actually inflamed by or cause inflammation, or you're taking medicines that you've been taking for years and they're actually causing damage to the cell walls and the mitochondria. Now, glutathione is like the master antioxidant in your body, and it's really, really critical that you have it at certain levels and it's not misfunctioning, right, in some way, shape, or form. So oxidation can cause these SNPs. And methylation, and finally to the one that most people have heard of. If they've heard of any SNP, they've heard of MTHFR, which is related to methylation, which is basically it is the mechanism by which your genes and your SNPs get turned on or silent. It's the messaging system of the body to create certain types of proteins or not. So methylation is a really critical system of the body, and MTHFR is somehow rose to the top of the ranks of like people sort of know about it. And it all has to do with methylation. But there's other things that can go wrong in the methylation cycle, and here are some of the examples there. Now, that is a ton of information. You don't need to know all those little like codes. It's just useful to know that these have been mapped and we're starting to understand this space well. But what is even more important to know is your genes are not your destiny. You get to actually influence your genes through how you engage with your food, with how you engage with inflammation, with how you engage with psychic trauma, and yes, including your epigenetic memories, the things that you're carrying with you that you didn't really have anything to do with. The fact that your great-grandfather was a horribly violent person had nothing to do with you, but yet you carry the memory of that trauma with you now. So what can we do about it? Well, we can begin to change it in our own life. And in fact, that's our responsibility. We have the ability to respond now that we know, right? So if you'd like to know a whole bunch more, please download this free 60-page ebook that I wrote called The Owner's Manual Part 2. I wrote it for you. I want you to have it. It's free. Just click on the link below and you'll have all sorts of information. And of course, if you like this video, if you watched this far, this is the secret about your genetics that no one tells you about. Hopefully that actually was kind of a secret that you didn't know, that your genes are not your destiny, that there's not one gene associated with cancer or stroke or heart disease, that actually so much of the chronic disease space could be ameliorated if we changed our lifestyle, if we began to eat in a healthy way for us, if we began to exercise or move in a healthy way for us, we begin to live our life in purpose, we begin to heal our trauma, reparenting. All the stuff we talk about in this channel will actually change your likelihood of disease at the genetic level. So if you like that, if you found that useful, if you stayed this far, I'm not going to say you owe me, but you might owe me a like or a comment or a subscribe. Comments are always welcome because that feels the most engaging. So what did you learn? What is exciting about this? I try to respond to as many as I can before it gets overwhelming. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a good one. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.